And welcome to the Coors Event Center. I am Matt Smith for Mile High Sports. Thank you very much for tuning in. Well, the Buffs are rolling. Another win tonight over the Washington State Cougars, 82-73. That is 4 of their last 5 games, and the Buffaloes advanced to 12-7 overall and 4-3 in conference. It is the first time in 649 days that the Colorado Buffaloes are above 500 in Pac-12 conference play. Remember now, last season, the Buffs didn't win their 4th conference game until their 12th Pac-12 game in the conference schedule last season. So these Buffs that were picked to finish 9th preseason by the media in the Pac-12 have surpassed expectations so far and continue to check off the list of accomplishments here. Tonight, a win over Washington State. Now, Tad Boyle after the game called this a very good team win. It was a game of runs, and in a way, it was a tale of two halves. In the first half, another very good start for the Buffaloes, and it really seems that setting the tone right away from an energetic standpoint, and Tad likes to talk about that as the price of admission. You know, playing with energy, playing with hustle, playing with, being competitive. But really, when this young team steps out on the floor and punches first, they are all the better. Colorado advances to 10-0 when leading at halftime, and it was another extremely impressive performance in the first half. Buffs shoot 59% from the field in the first half, 42% from the three-point line, and this had a very quick pace to it early on. The first foul in this game wasn't called until, the 13-19 mark. Very up and down flow in this basketball game, which forced Tad Boyle to go to his bench early. I also think it was a bit of a luxury tonight for the Buffaloes to incorporate their second unit, get some of those guys, Lucas Siewert more minutes. Dom Collier had a very good stretch tonight. In fact, he was huge in that first half. 12 points in the first 20 minutes for Dom, would finish with 13 on the night. But what he has been able to provide Colorado off the bench has been crucial. And the Buffs outscored the Cougars tonight 19-3 in bench scoring in the first half. Colorado took the 42-27 lead at halftime, but again, executing the game plan that this coaching staff prepared so well was really impressive to see, again, at the start of a game. They held Robert Franks, who in my opinion is the most improved player of the year in the Pac-12 Conference, and Malachai Flynn, without a doubt the best 2 players for that Cougars team in the first half, to 2 of 11, just 4 points. Overall, Franks and Flynn combined for 5 of 18 from the field. 13 points for both of those guys. So defensively, I asked Tad about that after the game. He said he felt like they did a very good job on both Flynn and Franks for the most part tonight, but Carter Skaggs got very hot in that second half. We'll get there in a second. Tad was not pleased about that whatsoever. Lucas Siewert also had 7 points in that first half, and he and Dom both combined for that 19 points off the bench for the Buffaloes, which is really big to see. Lucas, in his last 7 games combined, entering tonight, has just 13 points total. Tonight, he is one of the 5 Buffs in double figures. Siewert would finish with 11, and I think for him, seeing a couple go through the bucket, I think he only had 2 field goal attempts maybe in his last 3 games or so, gaining some confidence and being able to be a guy who at 6'10" can contribute not only on the offensive end, but also on the glass. He had 4 rebounds tonight. Coming off the bench, he's a huge piece for this Buffaloes team. If he can find consistency, it's something that I've talked to Tad about at length this season, and I think that's an area that, specifically with tonight's game, that this coaching staff really tried to boost Lucas and give him a little push in the right direction, because he was, in my opinion, from an individual perspective, before tonight's game, from an individual perspective, I think he had been the most disappointing player on this team this season. Much higher expectations for Lucas. But listen, this is just the second time this season that he scored in double figures. And if he can continue to provide and produce on a consistent basis, all the better for this Colorado team. The Buffs did a great job in their 1-2-2, 3-quarter court press, I thought, in the first 20 minutes. Slowed down Washington State. Defensively, did a very good job in that 2-3 zone. Went man a little bit there. Tad did a good job mixing it up. In the first half, they held the Cougars to 33% from the field, just 31% from the three-point line. And like I said, the Buffs did a very good job offensively. 11 assists on 16 makes. Those are great numbers. Tad said after the game he wants to see their final total assist number up around 20. I believe in the second half tonight they had just 5, but it was the 15-point lead at halftime for Colorado. And entering tonight, the Buffs were 9-0 when leading at halftime. But the areas of concern, especially in a few games, specifically the UCLA game and the Arizona game that we have seen for this Colorado team, would be the first 5 minutes of the second half. Coming out and once again setting the tone for another 20 minutes of competitive hard-nosed basketball. And tonight the Buffs did that. In the first 5 minutes of the second half, second 20 minutes, the Buffs hit 5 of their first 7 shots. They went on a 14-5 run over the first 5 minutes, and they extended a 15-point halftime lead to 26 with about 15 minutes remaining. George King had 8 points alone before the first media timeout of the second half. Buffs were blazing, and then, as young teams have a tendency to do, they lost a little bit of focus, lost some concentration. At least that's what McKinley Wright said after the game. He felt this team wasn't as concentrated as they could have been when they got that 26-point lead. But, you know, when you do that in conference play, you have to expect, when you have that lapse in focus, you have to expect that you're going to let a team back into this game. And tonight, 26-5 run over the next 7 minutes of that second half, and Washington State cut what was a 26-point lead down to 5. And then the Buffs had to get things going once again. McKinley Wright was outstanding down the stretch. So was Naaman Wright, in my opinion. Kin had, I believe, 13 of his team-high 17 points in that second half. And the Buffaloes closed things out on a very good note. After going, weathering that 26-5 run, having that 26-point lead cut down to 5, Colorado would go on a 12-0 run themselves and really close the door tonight on Washington State. Now, Carter Skaggs, I think, made this game closer than it really should have been. On the night, he was 5 of 11 from 3. He had 17 points. Heading into tonight, the scouting report was Franks, Flynn, and Skaggs. Those 3 guys are the majority and combine on the average night for the majority of Washington State's production. Well, Tad said he was not happy at all what Skaggs was able to do in that second half. He felt like there was an extreme lapse in concentration, and we've been talking a lot about how well these young Buffs have been executing game plans, and that was one area that I thought that they didn't execute very well whatsoever. But I think Carter Skaggs, by the time he's a senior, he's going to be a guy that you got to pick up when he crosses half court, because the kid has some serious range. Ernie Kent has some nice players up there in Washington State. I wouldn't say that they're an overwhelming team. They're probably best bet to finish, one of the worst 2 teams in the conference this season. But moving forward, I think that they have some good pieces, especially having, I think, 2 more years of Malachai, Flynn. So Colorado, like I said, 12-0 run, closed this game out, 82-73 the final score. But the concern in the second half was the percentage that the Buffaloes allowed the Cougars to shoot from 3. Washington State, 48% from the field in the second half, 55% from the three-point line, 10 of 18 alone from the three-point line in the second half. That team was, I think, 3rd in the country heading into tonight in three-point field goals made per game in the country. The Buffs knew that. Tad Boyle said that assistant coach Bill Greer challenged this team after just having allowed 5 threes in the first 20 minutes to just allow 3 in the second half. Have that be a good goal. Tad was not pleased with allowing 10, obviously. It almost erased a very big lead and could have been bad news for the Buffaloes, but they weather another run, and the fight is there again, and they return home after a big UCLA win and a huge road split in LA and come up with the victory over the Cougars tonight. Individual perspective, McKinley Wright, 17 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, just 2 turnovers. We really like to see that after having a bit of a rough stretch here in the last, I think he might have had 4+ turnovers in his last 4 games before tonight. 2 steals as well. McKinley now with 100 assists this season. It is the 4th most by a freshman in Buffs history, and he is just 43 now behind Chauncey Billups' freshman record of 143, and there are 12 games left this season. McKinley Wright certainly going to have himself a storybook freshman year when it is all said and done. Naaman Wright with his first double-double as a CU Buff tonight, 16 points, 10 rebounds for the Buffs, also had 3 assists. Naaman has really shifted things here in about the last month or so, and he combined with George King, who also had 16 points tonight, just 9 rebounds for George, and Dom Collier. Naaman, George, and Dom, the veteran experience, when those guys show up and contribute and lead this team, they can beat just about anybody in the country, and we're seeing that right now. Now, whether they can do that on a consistent basis, there's still plenty of time left, 12 games left, but what we're seeing from Naaman Wright right now, after leading his team in rebounding as a sophomore at Missouri, taking that transfer year off, dealing with injuries in his redshirt season, it seems that now he's finally getting to be the player that, at the very minimum, that I expected him to be at some point, and it's better late than never, and boy, it has come in a huge period of time for Colorado at the beginning of conference play here. Dom Collier, like I said, 13 points, 5 rebounds. Great to see Dom with those 5 boards off the bench. Tad has certainly challenged him to rebound at a higher level this season. Tyler Bay with 4 points, 2 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 blocks and a steal, pretty much all in the first half. Only plays 21 minutes in this one. I think he had 14 in the first half. Tad said that with how well Dom had been playing and the fact that, Washington State had continued to chip away at the lead, Tyler didn't make his way back into the rotation, but it was certainly because of nothing that he did. Tyler, I asked McKinley actually after the game, can you compare Tyler Bay right now to who Tyler Bay was 3 months ago? He said you can't even compare him because he's grown up so much. Boy, Tyler was the tone setter against UCLA with a huge dunk there at the outset, and tonight with a beautiful putback dunk in the early goings. I thought really helped the Buffaloes set the tone, especially energetically, with a very good crowd for a Washington State game tonight. Obviously, this was the first game with the students back here in the Coors Event Center after winter break, so with school just getting started this week. It was good to see that the students, they saw what they missed over break and they showed up in numbers tonight. From a disappointing perspective on an individual note, Lazar Nikolic, Deshaun Schwartz, and Deleon Brown combined for just 2 points in 27 minutes. Now, in my opinion, when this Buffs team is at their best, from one of those guys, if not 2 of them, Lazar Nikolic, Deleon Brown, and Deshaun Schwartz, you're probably getting around 10 points a night from at least 2 of those guys. One of them has to step up and contribute if Colorado wants to beat the better teams. Tonight they were able to get away with, not getting much from those guys whatsoever, but when you go up against a team like you're gonna have to next week on the road against Arizona State, you're gonna need contribution from your role players, and we'll see if they can't help contribute in a bigger way on Saturday against Washington. Team perspective, I thought the execution of the game plan for I think maybe 5th straight game, I don't know, I think maybe 4 out of the last 5. The USC game plan, I thought was pretty good, to be honest, but so I would say the last 5. But, obviously they had turned the ball over way too much in that game, 22 times. But I thought they executed tonight, on the whole, pretty well. Rebounding, they out-rebound Washington State by 10, 39-29 on the glass, which is good to see. Washington State near the bottom of the Pac-12 in pretty much every rebounding category. And the other note, team-wise, that I really liked was transition offense. The Buffaloes led in fast break points tonight, 15-6. I thought they did a really good job running off of Washington State turnovers, and on the whole, they did a pretty good job taking care of the basketball. I think in this one they finish with 10 turnovers, 15 assists, 1.5 team assist to turnover ratio is pretty solid, and you'll take that pretty much every single night. Now, next up for the Buffs, the UW Huskies here on Saturday at 4 p.m. It's a 4 p.m. tip-off time at the Coors Event Center. It is the first year for the Huskies under head coach Mike Hopkins. Of course, Lorenzo Romar and his very well-known tenure there up in UW, getting top talent every year, but putting pretty much nothing on the floor, especially results-wise, at the end of the day, especially in that latter part of his tenure up there in Seattle. They were playing Utah right now, and if the score holds, they will fall on the road at Utah. But this is a team that will play you zone defense for 40 minutes. And they've got a very, very formidable, I think, four-headed monster. They've got a top 50 ESPN freshman from last year and pretty much the biggest I think the biggest chip in recruiting that was held over from Lorenzo Romar and Jalen Noel, who on the season averaging 16, 3, and 2. Noah Dickerson has really transformed himself as a basketball player. Their big man down low, 14.7 rebounds for him. David Crisp, their senior point guard up there for the Huskies, 12, 2, and 3. Matisse Thybulle with 10 points, 4 rebounds a game, and averages 3.1 steals per game. He is 4th in the country entering today in steals per game. Now, the one thing that Washington does that really piques my interest is they are leading the Pac-12 in both steals and blocks, playing in a 2-3 zone defense, which means they rotate pretty well on the whole, they communicate, and they're playing a whole new brand of basketball up there under Coach Hopkins, because they certainly were doing none of that under Lorenzo Romar. Good to see that Seattle, the fans up there in Seattle, get to experience taste of good basketball here in 2017-18. They have wins in conference play over USC, Washington State, and home versus Cal. They are 3-3 in conference play, 13-6 overall, following the loss to Utah tonight. Tad Boyle had a very interesting quote after this game, speaking about that contest. He said that this was a good team win, but Saturday is a separation game because of where the standings have kind of shaken out. And the Buffaloes want to see if they can continue to beat top half teams in this league. They have a big chance to do it and give themselves a two-game advantage over 500 mark, which is huge because they next have to go on the road to Arizona and Arizona State. Neither of those places are going to be easy to play, and neither of those games are going to be easy wins. You need to take care of business at home. That's what the theme of this week is about. The Buffs got off to a good start with an 82-73 win over Washington State tonight. And the other note that I'll wrap up on is in less than 15 days, the Buffaloes are 4-1 in their last 5 games. And after losing to the 2 Oregon schools, then beating both of the Arizona schools at home, the big win at UCLA, coming home, taking care of Washington State, the Buffs jumped from the mid-90s in the RPI up to 54. Still early, but it shows that a young team, if you continue fighting, the reward will be there in the end. And if you continue to have no expectations surrounding this program other than they can take care of the ones they need to at home and let the rest be gravy, it's certainly going to be a very fun conclusion to this season. We will see you on Saturday from the Coors Event Center, from this building, 4 p.m. against the Huskies. I am Matt Smith. Thank you very much for tuning in. Make sure you follow along on Twitter at @RealMattSmith, that's Matt with 1 T, and at Mile High Sports for all your Buffs coverage. And until we see you against Washington, thank you as always for your time.